lot of myths growing up as a preacher's kid that, we heard and things we heard people said to us. So first thing is we were not and we are not all tattletales. So, a lot of times growing up, people will be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna do this around you because you're gonna tell your dad because he the preacher," and I'm like, I don't care. So we're not tattletales. Uh, Next one is very familiar, especially to preacher's kids. If you are a preacher's kid, you've definitely heard this. And when you tell someone that your dad's a minister, they're like, "Oh, see, I know about you." And I want to say it's a myth that PKs are not the worst ones. In fact, everybody else is. Um, Another myth is that we have memorized the entire Bible, and that's just not true. Um, a big myth, and especially for me, is that if your dad's a minister, that you automatically want to be a pulpit minister as well. That is not the case. It is a myth. I do not want to be a pulpit minister as growing up. And then the last one is no, we did not have daily Bible studies in our home every day. That's not what we did. We actually, ate dinner and watched TV and those types of things. So just a couple of myths. Simone, I don't know if you had anything.
No, you covered it. Yeah.
All right. Cool. So this scripture is one of my favorites. It talks about how we treat one another, and I thought it was appropriate for our discussion tonight. So Philippians chapter 2, verses 3-4, do nothing from selfish or empty conceit, but with humility consider one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interest, but also for the interest of others. And I certainly think that is applicable when you're talking about the experiences of preachers' kids or leaders' families. So some of the great things that have happened as PK is what is understood doesn't need to be said. What do I mean by that? So oftentimes when my dad would take us to a gospel meeting that he was preaching at, the first people we typically met was the other preacher's family. And a lot of times it's like, you see somebody and you like nod because you understand without having to say anything. You understand where they were coming from, what they had gone through. And it's nice. It's always good to be able to connect with someone who has similar experiences as you do, in this case, as a leader's family.
Yeah, I agree. Whenever we would go places, a lot of times we were younger than a lot of my parents' peers in the ministry. And so what we inherited were a lot of big sisters and big brothers, people who, when we went off to college, we had their numbers and they'd make sure we ate, or we were connected to people who could help us out with internships, that type of thing. So yeah, the connections, just preachers' kids looking out for other preachers' kids or other leaders' kids, just making sure, just because they knew we would be looked at a little bit differently. That was always helpful.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, life is just to give you a glimpse into what it's like in growing up in a preacher's house. I am one. If you didn't know, my wife is one as well. The microscope is always on you, and you feel this pressure to kind of perform. You feel like you have to walk correctly all the time, even though some members of the congregation may not be walking correctly all the time. If you mess up, it's a whole lot different than if somebody else's kids mess up, or if the preacher's wife messes up. It has a bigger shock waves as if someone else's wife messes up. So it was challenging to be honest with you, to grow up in that type of environment. And again, you never want to embarrass your family or anything like that. So you just had to be really careful about what you did.
Well, one thing I can say is, that microscope didn't come from home. That microscope tended to come from other people. So another part of what's understood doesn't need to be said is, your parents, your family, I have 3 older siblings. So it's really nice having 3 older siblings and a mama who didn't grow up in the Church of Christ and a daddy who, wasn't a preacher his whole life, to all be able to understand that, no, I'm not a perfect person and it's okay if I make mistakes.
Yep. So again, what's understood doesn't need to be said. All right. So another great thing about growing up in a preacher's household is the way people did look out. So, we'll share a couple of stories about what that looks like in our respective lives, but um, a lot of people were very cognizant and very, very helpful, because you think about what a minister does, which is, give you the word and package it in a way that you can receive it and hopefully help you change your life for the better. And you think about what that means, like it's literally soul salvation and using God's using that person to do that. And I mean, I have to really give a really big shout out to the people at Southside in Orlando and also in Tallahassee at Spring Hill Road. They have been amazing, like even to this day, at looking out for me and, asking if I have what I need, again, because they appreciate the impact that my dad and my mom made in their lives, again, from either preaching every Sunday or the counseling sessions or those, as Alvin mentioned, some of those sometimes late night phone calls. They really appreciated that, and they kind of paid it forward to myself and the rest of my family.
Same here. I mean, I can think of acts that people have done for me. So I remember driving home from college one time and getting a flat tire out in the middle of nowhere. And one of the brothers from the congregation, who happens to also be an elder, but he came, changed the tire, made sure I was able to get back home, called my dad to make sure he knew that I was safe and okay. People really do go out of their way, go above and beyond just to make sure you're doing good, to make sure you're safe. I can't count how many people made sure I had groceries and always knew that I had a place to sleep if I didn't want to sleep in my apartment or, on campus, and stay home by myself. Or if I didn't want to go home for the holidays or couldn't, I always had someplace else to go. So it was really nice having people to just go above and beyond. I still love pumpkin pancakes because that was my Saturday meal from one of the sisters who I went to college with. So.
Yeah, even before college, I was in the band. I was a band nerd, and one time at band camp, I went to FAMU's marching band camp every summer, and that was sponsored by a member at one of the local congregations, and it wasn't cheap, but they invested in me. While I was in college, again, like people knew me and they knew me because of who my dad is. And they just, again, looked out, again, to echo what Simone said. Are you hungry? Do you need anything? Some of them worked on campus and, they would see me, they would just give me $20 and slip me $20 just because, which was, again, really nice. Even after college, they still, again, were looking out for me, making sure I had what I need. So when I moved to North Carolina, for example, again, my dad, he, has had the fortune of preaching in a lot of places, and he's met people that I hadn't met, but then I meet them and they know me because of him. And again, they look to like, take care of me and make sure I'm good. It made moving to North Carolina so much easier, having known a congregation to go to, because again, my dad had that relationship, and being able to, again, just be integrated very seamlessly into the congregation. And so, but people, again, like really, really looked out for me and for Simone as well, made sure we had what we needed when we needed it. And, it was just great. I really do appreciate it.
Another form of looking out was my sister and I, we got told that we were going to Bible camp one summer. We didn't have an option. And since we were going, all of the other members made their kids go just so we didn't have to go by ourselves. That's good looking out. So we weren't the only little chocolate faces in the Bible camp up in the mountain in the woods.
South Carolina.
Of South Carolina, upstate South Carolina. But yeah, just making sure that we had companionship and that we knew people. And the beautiful thing about the congregation was that they paid for everything. Like no parent had to come out of pocket because the congregation just made sure that every kid could go who wanted to go and whose parents wanted them to go.
Absolutely. So the last thing we want to share, a couple weeks ago, I put on an event at work, and got some feedback, and the individual that gave me the feedback, she gave it in this method. It's called the start, stop, and continue method. And when I saw it, I was like, what is that? And it basically means start doing something, stop doing this, and continue doing that. And I thought it was really powerful. And so I wanted to share a couple of things with you. Again, it's kind of a continuation, what we talked about a couple of weeks ago with preachers. So I want you to start. And again, you may already be doing some of these things. You may not be doing some of these things. They could go kind of in either bucket, but I had to pick something. So I want you to start checking in more often with the minister's family. I can't tell you how much that means to not only to the family, but also to the minister. I think it was Vince that said he really appreciates it when people from his flock check in on his wife and his kids. That means the world because the preacher's family has stuff going on too. And sometimes we forget about the family. And, we may check on the preacher, but if we do, sometimes we don't check on the preacher's and his family. And that's really important.
Another one is looking for opportunities to show support. So a lot of times preachers have to be strong. They're taking everybody else's burdens on. They may not have an outlet to just say that they have needs also. So it's really good for you to look for opportunities to support them because they may not always be vocal about what they need.
Absolutely. And again, just paying attention. If you see something that's maybe lacking, go ahead and asking for permission and just look for opportunities. Again, as the scripture in Philippians says, we have to consider others more important than ourselves. And so it's hard to do that when you're trying to, think about yourself only. So look for opportunities to support not only the minister, but also his family. Whether it's, I think Janae mentioned going to a soccer game, or if they have a band concert, like for me, when I was in high school, I had members from Southside come in and listen to me play. And I know I didn't sound that good, but just the fact to have them there in the audience, that really did something for me, and also did something for the rest of my family as well. The last thing for start encouraging more family time. So this is really important. You may or may not know, but your minister is often pulled away at different things. And you think about how many people are at your church and how many people call him for whatever, and when they call him for whatever, in addition to having to preach and will prepare for a sermon on Sundays and preaching on Sundays, maybe 2 times, preparing for Wednesday night Bible study, preparing for counseling sessions, preparing for funerals, all those things. And that can really pull the minister away from his family. And so whenever you get a chance, again, family time is really important. And I really value this about Vince, because, he makes sure that he spends time with his family, that it's important to him. Sometimes ministers can get so caught up in, the work that they can forget their family, not intentionally, but just from the nature of the job, just like we do. We start working and we forget what time it is, and before you know it, it's 6 o'clock, right? And you haven't gone to the bathroom, or you haven't eaten lunch. So ministers can get caught up in that, and please do encourage them to start spending more time with their family. The second part is to stop. So these are things that we should stop doing. One of the things, again, I mentioned it in the Mythbusters, is when we put people on a pedestal. So a lot of times, and I know they were jokes when I was growing up, but when we had to memorize our Bible verse, and they were like, "Oh, Jonathan, I know you memorized it because you're the preacher's son." I'm like, I actually didn't read this until this morning, so I hope you go first. Let me go last, right? But don't put people on a pedestal, especially our leaders and their families, because they are human and they do make mistakes, and they will make mistakes. And when you put people on a pedestal, it's easy to kick the pedestal from under them and make the fall a little bit greater than it should be.
Also, stop having different expectations of preachers' kids and preachers' families than you do of other people and of yourself. They have flaws, they have faults, they are human, just like you are. And just like you do, every person has their own individual issues, problems, things that they deal with. So, be gracious to people and stop having expectations that they are going to be perfect, and also stop expecting them to fail if they can't live up to your expectation. Don't treat them cruelly. Just be gracious.
Amen. Last thing, you want to stop doing is stop forgetting the family. Again, a lot of times, everybody knows the minister, and they'll laud him, great job, da 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 da, all this stuff. But realize that his family has made a great sacrifice for him to do what he does, especially the wife. You think about, again, all of the things that he's pulled into, counseling sessions, preaching, and all that stuff. And she gives her time to the people that he serves. You think about the kids who, they want their dad at their game or whatever the case is. They give their time to you, to the congregation. And so don't forget about the family. I had to applaud Southside and Spring Hill Road. Whenever they had appreciations for my dad, it wasn't just an appreciation for my dad, it was an appreciation for the entire family. So I got gifts too. Yeah, I got cards with money in them. I think Carlos would like that.
I did too.
Yeah, Simone did too. Like, even, she's newer to the family, but they recognized her. And again, that makes you, as a family, want to go harder for the place that you're at. And so don't forget the family. So last thing, some things you want to continue to be wise with your words. I can't stress this enough. You have to remember that when you say things, your words have impact. So when you say something bad about the preacher, you're not just talking to his wife. That's also her preacher and her husband. When you say something and it gets back to the kids, that's their father and that's their preacher. So be really wise with your words, because again, words have meaning, words have impact, and you can create division by the words that you speak.
That also holds true with, carrying rumors, making accusations, being careful about the things that you say about people. Even if it's true, you still want to make sure that you're not saying things in a way that compromises relationships. The next one is realizing their humanity. I said it before, people are people and people are fallible. Everybody has issues. Everybody has what I call a something, something that is wrong, something that triggers them, something that makes them tick. You don't want to be a stumbling block for anybody. So continue to just be kind, be gracious, and to realize that they're a person too. They put their drawers on one leg at a time, just like you do.
Yep. Last thing you want to do is be concerned, not nosy. So sometimes some members, they want to know what's going on in the preacher's house, right? And they will poke and prod, and they'll ask the kids, hey, what about this, with not good intentions. Or they'll cozy up to the preacher's wife, to not to be her friend, but to try to extract information out of her about, again, what's going on in their house. So beware of that. I'm not saying any of you are like that, but if you know somebody like that, tell them stop being nosy. There's nothing wrong with being concerned. That being concerned and being nosy are two different things. And you want to make sure that you're concerned. Pray for your preacher, pray for the family. And sometimes you just have to leave it there. You don't have to know everything. In fact, if you knew everything about your preacher and their family, you might not want to go to the church again. So again, it's important that you are concerned and not nosy. That is the lesson for tonight. Thank you for your time. We open it up for any comments, questions, concerns.